Hi, my name is Emily Callahan, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Iowa caucuses. Now, to be clear, I was born in Virginia, I was raised in Virginia. In fact, I'm registered to vote in Virginia. All this is to say I don't know crap about the Iowa caucuses. Or at least I didn't. Over the past few months, I've attended the University of Iowa and started to work at the Daily Iowan. I've learned, trust me. So for those of you who follow politics, I'm sure you know a little about the caucuses, but even if you don't, you've probably heard a lot about them over the past few days. The caucuses were such a debacle this year that the people who couldn't even pick out Iowa on a blank map a month ago, hint, it's that one, all of a sudden have a lot to say about Iowa's politics, and a lot of questions about this whole caucus business. So let's take it from the top. Last Monday, February 4th, thousands of Iowans across the state skipped episode 5 of The Bachelor to go perform their civic duty. Cafeterias, gymnasiums, ballrooms, and lobbies alike were filled with chants for politicians and people milling around talking to each other about politics. It's worth noting both the Republicans and the Democrats hold caucuses, but the Republican ones are different. They're more boring. And this year especially, we knew what was going to happen. Trump won in a landslide. So, disclaimer, everything else I say is about the Democratic caucuses. The caucuses can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 3 or 4 hours. It works sort of like a ranked choice ballot, but out loud and in person. Each candidate has a designated corner of the room where their supporters congregate. After everyone has selected their candidate, the organizers do a first count. After the first count, the organizers tally up all the support for each candidate and calculate viability. A candidate has to have at least 15% of all the caucus goers to be viable for the second round. Before that second counting, people have a chance to realign. In the past, after the first counting, everyone could realign, but this year, the Iowa Democratic Party made a few changes. If the candidate you caucused for in the first counting was viable, you were allowed to leave and your vote still counted in the next count. So the only people realigning were those whose first choice was less popular. At the end of the second alignment, caucus goers are allowed to go home and organizers calculate how many delegates each candidate will receive. Okay, that's the theory of it all, but let's talk about how it actually works. So I reported on Monday from Des Moines Precinct 47, so we'll use their numbers as an example. 366 people showed up to caucus at DM 47. There were 12 candidates in the Democratic field this year, and of those 12, 10 got at least one vote in the first round. And the other and uncommitted categories also received votes. However, because 366 people showed up, a campaign needed at least 55 votes to be viable. That leaves us with only 3 candidates, Buttigieg, Sanders, and Warren. Anyone who caucused for those 3 candidates could have left, but everyone else had to stay and either realign or declare that they would not realign. 15 people did not realign, leaving us with 351 votes to allocate. We ended up with Warren leading Sanders by 18 votes and Buttigieg 6 votes behind that. Now, what that last column on the right is the state delegate equivalence. So after the precinct caucuses, each county will hold a county convention, and then the entire state will hold a convention. Now, all of the delegates from DM 47 are worth about 2.2 state delegates. Then you divide that number up among the candidates based on how they polled at the precinct caucus. And voila, Buttigieg gets 60% of a state delegate and Warren and Sanders each get 80%. Mind you, that's 80% of one individual delegate. But when you add up all the precincts, that's where you see the delegate numbers you see on these statewide maps. Okay, now that we've covered all that, let's talk about what happened this caucus night. February 3rd, 2020. At about 10:30 p.m., most caucus goers were headed home and organizers were finishing up their calculations when all hell began to break loose. Even as precincts were entirely finished, results still weren't rolling in. Political aficionados, pundits, reporters, and candidates across the state and even the country are waiting anxiously to report results, to predict the upcoming primaries, and to declare victory. But as time marched onward, nothing happened. Trust me, I know, I was there. Reports were coming out that a new app the IDP was pioneering to help streamline result reporting had crashed. The Iowa Democrats assured the public nothing had been hacked, but had a little more to say than that. Finally, at 1 a.m., the IDP held a press conference in which they basically said, "We'll tell you who won in the morning." And so we waited. At 4 p.m. on Tuesday, results finally began rolling in. But at that point, multiple campaigns had declared victorious nights in Iowa, and candidates were on flights to New Hampshire. Reports too began to come in that Pete Buttigieg, who few had expected to perform as well as he did in Iowa, had put money into the app that crashed caucus results. Conspiracy theories flew. This theory, at least, we can put more or less to rest because the app called Shadow that was supposed to organize caucus results was also paid by Joe Biden. His numbers didn't look too great, if you remember. What the candidates paid for was access to text message banking data, essentially Iowans' phone numbers. The IDP also added a new measure this year to help legitimize the caucusing process and to eliminate errors of this sort: paper ballots. The results that we have are legitimate, but there are questions on calculations. The National Democratic Party chair has promised to audit the results if any campaign asks for it, as there may have been some errors with the calculations of delegates, but no issues of corruption have arisen. Many Bernie supporters have complained that Sanders won the popular vote, but Buttigieg is winning delegates. This is also true, and it's because of the number of delegates allocated to each precinct. So let's break it down with a little example. If Precinct A and Precinct B both have 10 delegates, but only 100 people show up at Precinct A and 500 show up at Precinct B, and 40% of the people at Precinct A vote for Bernie and 60% vote for Pete, but at Precinct B, 60% vote Bernie and 40% vote Pete, Bernie would have 80 more votes, but they would have the same number of delegates. Okay, but at the end of the day, who won and who lost? That's what we really want to know. Well, both Pete and Bernie still come out looking pretty good. Even if Pete ends up losing, he performed well above what people expected from him. Now, Elizabeth Warren looked all right at best. A top 2 finish would have been much better for her, but her numbers are solid enough headed to New Hampshire, where she'll be much more comfortable. Klobuchar would have liked a top 4 finish, but being as close as she is to Biden is huge for her because her campaign wasn't necessarily as strong as it could have been at this point. Biden, frankly, looked terrible. The caucus debacle really did him a solid in that he did not have to address his huge underperformance in Iowa that night. His best hope at this point is South Carolina, but his poor showing here won't do him any favors. Most other candidates didn't make enough of a splash to really be worth mentioning. Yang and Steyer had a couple of votes, but frankly nothing to write home about. But we can all agree the biggest loser is the Iowa Democratic Party. This little snafu could cost them their place as the first in the nation. A lot of people find the caucuses archaic and confusing already, and this year's chaos did not disprove that idea. Moreover, the caucuses have always had the issue of disallowing a lot of potential voters. Journalists, for example, are discouraged from voting, as are many public officials. Parents with young children, students with night classes, or anyone working an evening shift simply can't cut out 3 or 4 hours of their evening to go vote. The caucuses have long been controversial, but this may have been the push needed to wipe them off the map completely. But if you're a fan of caucusing, you don't have to worry quite yet. Nevada, Wyoming, and North Dakota still have yet to caucus this year. If the issues are worked out by then, all might not be lost. But if Iowa does end up losing its first-in-the-nation status, it'll also likely lose its footing as a political giant in America. We'll have to see what happens over these next few years. I hope that cleared up a mess of the situation for y'all, and make sure to keep up with all the elections coming our way. If anything else insane happens, I'll be sure to update you. I've been Emily Callahan. Thanks for watching.